Hey lovely freaks, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host Amanda, and today I have a special guest. My sister's not able to be here today, simply because we're in a snowpocalypse right now, here in the south. So my husband is here. Say hey.
I'm the Senate. I'm just kidding.
So anyways, he's here with me, and we're gonna do this together. So the intro is a little different than usual, but if you want to, you can go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you don't already know, we are on Spotify, Amazon Music, fixing to be on iTunes. I'm waiting for them to verify us, and a whole bunch of different places. So if you go to our Instagram, which is at Lovely Freaks Podcast, you will find a linktree link, and you can click on it, and then you'll see like all the different places you can hear us and listen and all that good stuff. I'm trying to think if there's anything I need to tell you guys. So yeah, we're super excited that we're on Spotify. I wish Hannah was here I know she's really excited, but like I said, she can't be here because the roads are really in bad condition, and she lives about 20 minutes from where I live, so it's not good for her to drive right now. But this is part 2 of the Moores murders. So hopefully you listened to part 1. If you did not, go ahead and pause this and go on over and listen to part 1, because we're going to pick up like in the middle of pretty much one of the murders. So you're not going to know anything about these people. I'll just give a brief overview though. So far we have talked about Myra, Hindley and Ian Brady. I usually say his name first, so I got backwards there. But anyways, so they're awful humans. They have killed 2 children so far, I believe, or 3. I can't remember. 3. They've killed 3 kids so far. And full disclaimer, we're going to jump right into like one of the worst murders. Like I said last time though, I'm not going to go into super detail. I'm going to kind of tell you guys what happened to this sweet baby angel, but I'm not going to go into too much detail. But if you want to go ahead and skip this part, you can, because there will be talks of rape, strangulation, and things like that. And of course, it's a child. So I'm just going to go ahead and start. And my husband doesn't really know anything about this case, but it's fine. He'll figure it out. Okay, so December 26, 1964, Leslie Ann Downey. She was 10 years old, and she was so sweet. Like, if you see the picture of her, and I'll post a picture of her, obviously, she kind of looks like Shirley Temple to me. Like, she was really, really pretty. Leslie was wearing a red dress, pink cardigan over the red dress. She had red shoes and a blue coat and pearls that her brother had given her for Christmas the day before. So this was around Christmas time, obviously. The day that she went missing, she was supposed to be going to the fair with her brother, I believe, but her brother was sick, and so she decided to go with Mrs. Clark and the neighbor kids, because Mrs. Clark told her mom, Ann, she was like, hey, I'm going to the fair, I'll take my kids, I'll take Leslie, and the mom was like, okay, that's fine. However, the Mrs. Clark, the neighbor next door, she ended up not going to the fair at the last minute, but she did not tell Ann, Leslie's mom, that she was like not gonna go. Which, I mean, if you're going to take somebody else's kid to a fair, then you need to let them know, hey, I'm not going, I'm just gonna let the kids go. So she let the kids go by themselves, essentially, which kind of sucks, because I don't think any of this would have happened if Mrs. Clark would have went, but whatever. After she got to the fair, she was staying around. She didn't want to go back home. Leslie didn't. So all the other kids kind of like ran out of money or whatever, and they were like, hey, we're going back home. And she was like, no, I want to stay a little bit longer. And so they left her. All the other kids left her. I think they had most of the kids were about her age, about 10, 11, 12. So they weren't responsible enough to be like, no, I'm not going to leave you. None of them were, teenagers or anything like that. But this is in 1960. So, I mean, it wasn't uncommon for kids to be at the fair by themselves or walk down the street by themselves or whatever. So one little boy would say later that he saw a woman leading Leslie by the hand out of the fair, and she kind of looked like she was just going with her willingly. She wasn't struggling or anything like that, so he didn't think of anything. Come to find out later, obviously, that would be Myra. Myra asked Leslie if she would help her take some boxes to her car like she did every time. That's kind of the thing that she used. And then Myra said that after you help me with the boxes, I'll take you home, and that way you don't have to walk home or nothing like that. And so Leslie, obviously being the sweet kid that she is, agreed. And that's when the little boy saw, her being let out of the fair. So now we're going to get to the heavy parts. If you want to skip past this, you can, if it bothers you. So Myra brings Leslie to her grandmother's house. Her grandmother, I couldn't figure out if she was there or not. I know that we said during one of the murders that she wasn't there. So her grandmother, I don't believe she was there during this, though. There's an audio tape that's about 16 minutes long of this whole entire thing because they're monsters and they decided to record it. They also took pictures of her. The audio hasn't been released to the public because it was just pretty awful. But her mom did say in a documentary that she did want the audio to be released because she wanted people to understand how much of a monster these two are. And the reason why was because I think Myra was trying to come up for parole over and over again. She tried, but the mother was like, I want everybody to understand that she's like a piece of shit. Because she, like I said last time, Myra constantly lies and says, oh, I wasn't there during that, or I didn't do that, Ian did that, blah, 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 blah. So at the beginning of the tape, you can hear her screaming and crying, and she's asking the whole time, she keeps asking for her mommy. She even pleads with God, the little girl does, and Myra says, shut up or I'll smack you. And Ian, of course, the whole time is telling her to shut up while they're trying to shove a sock in her mouth. Eventually, they strangle her after Ian rapes her, and they both sexually assault her, and then they cut her throat, or cut her neck. Myra, who claims, like she does every time, like I said, she said she was running a bath, because she said that she was going to run the bath so that way they could bathe her afterwards, because they didn't think that she didn't think that Ian was going to kill her. So that's bullshit, obviously.
Sounds like a really deranged Red Riding Hood story. Except one big bad wolf.
Yeah.
Two.
There's two instead of one.
Better to rape you with, my dear.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I didn't understand the whole, and even Ian, who, he's a piece of shit, but at least, like I said last time, he doesn't really lie when he's telling all this, because he's like, yeah, I did that, I killed them, I don't really care, whatever. He was like, I don't know why she thought, later on he would say he didn't understand why she thought it would be okay to say that she was running a bath. Like, who the hell would run a bath for a child that we're about to murder?
Sounds like a grasping at straws to come up with an alibi is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Some straight bullshit.
Myra actually says in court later, she said, yes, I did say I would hit her, but I wasn't going to hit her much. Yeah. So she was like, I wasn't going to hit her much. I was just going to hit her, just tap her lightly.
Just a light lashing.
Yeah. I don't know. Ian said
that to Jesus. It's just going to be a light lashing.
Yeah. So Ian said that, like, later on, he said actually that Myra actually strangled her and ended up killing her, which I totally believe him. Ian says, yeah, we did run a bath, but that was because we were going to bathe her body afterwards, so that way they could get all the fibers from their house or dog or anything like that off of the body before they buried it, so that way they wouldn't have any evidence, which makes way much more
DNA
sense.
everywhere. That doesn't make any sense.
But it makes more sense than what she was talking about.
Gotta get rid of the dog hair, so they won't figure out who did it.
And this is back in 1960, so I don't understand. I mean, I don't know. I guess they had pretty good evidential stuff back then, but whatever. They couldn't bury Leslie at the moors right away. And like we said before, the moors are these vast lands in England. Kind of. They have boulders. They're just vast plains, basically. They have some swampy areas, but they have boulders and large rocks and things like that. And that's where they would bury the kids.
I know that they've like buried kids or buried people in bogs before, and it preserves the body pretty well because it's all wet and moist and it's real squishy. So I don't know. Moors, bogs. I thought there were bogs and moors, but maybe it's different. Maybe I'm being stupid. Anyways.
So they couldn't bury her there because it was snowing like crazy until the snow stopped. So they just left her naked body face down on their bed, or on Myra's bed, and then they slept in the next room till they could bury her in the moors. There was a massive search for Leslie, obviously. They even shut down the fair that she was at so they could search. And Leslie's mom did want the photo. So she let the photos that were taken of Leslie, you know, like the very bad photos, she let those be in the documentary that came out in 1999 because, like I said, she wanted everyone to see how evil these two people are. She hated people that were Myra supporters. So yes, just going to blow your mind real quick. There were actually people that supported Myra because, like I said last time, they thought that Ian had her pretty much brainwashed and like she was being held unwillfully.
Just because she was a woman and she could do no evil, no
exactly
harm. Whatever.
And so people were like, "Oh, she wouldn't have done that." You know, he was a controlling man that would make her. Sorry, I lost train of thought. She was like he was controlling. You know, but Myra said one final thing about the murder of Leslie. The girl, this pisses me off really badly. And as I said, but like last time, I hate this. I fucking hate this woman with every fiber of my being. She said the girl shouldn't have been out at night. Like that was what she said. Like to the fact that she got murdered.
You point fingers all you want. I mean, you point fingers at the parents. Technically, I'm just talking devil's advocate right now because at the beginning,
Speak up a little bit.
At the beginning, I remember you saying something about like
the
mom or the woman didn't let the mom know, and the mom should ask
the neighbor.
Are you gonna go?
Well, the mom did ask.
And
I do believe.
I know in the 60s they were teaching kids to stay away from strangers.
Yeah.
I don't know how it was in good old England, but I mean,
well, I do know in
but for the murderer to be like, oh, that girl shouldn't have been out at night. How about don't be a deranged
been a murderer.
child rapist? I mean,
maybe you shouldn't have, snatched a little girl up from the fair and murdered her and raped her and slit her throat. But, that's just me. David Smith was Myra's sister's, her sister Maureen. They had just gotten married. So David and Maureen were Myra's sister and brother-in-law. There we go. They had just gotten married, and they had a baby girl named Angela. David and Ian... David said that Ian and Myra never really held their daughter, obviously, because they're pedophiles and child murderers. They didn't know that at the time. David didn't, but... So that's probably why they never held their niece. Unfortunately, at 6 months old, though, their baby died of bronchitis. And after this, David and Myra started spending a lot of time with Ian. I mean, David and Maureen started spending a lot of time with Ian and Myra. Those names, man. So Ian and Myra, of course, would bring them to the moors without them knowing that they had killed children and buried them there right beneath their feet. Ian and David would hang out and drink and talk. Ian was trying to get David to do robberies. So Ian was still, whatever. He was still trying to, or he was still like robbing houses while he was doing these murders as well. Just because, so he could steal shit, I guess. Kleptomaniac, I don't know. So, he was trying to talk David into robbing houses with him. And David really wasn't interested. So then he was like, well, what do you think about this? And he showed him like a picture of somebody he asked him, what do you think about committing murder then? Like, that's the next step. Like, well, if you don't like robbing houses, what do you think about committing murder? Like, what the fuck?
If this doesn't catch your fix, I've got this for you.
Yeah.
Robbery's just an open gateway drug for murder.
So, then Ian said, I've done it. I'm sure you don't believe me, but I've done about 3 or 4. Their bodies are buried out at the moors. So he eventually convinced David. So David wasn't like a straight-laced guy, but he wasn't a murderer. And he didn't think that, number one, Ian was telling the truth. And also he thought that if he did murder somebody, he thought, oh shit, this guy is crazy. And he's probably been murdering like, people that have wronged him or something like that. He had no clue that it was children. Not that it matters, but he should have reported him. But anyways, we'll keep going. So he eventually convinced David to, do a murder. I mean, do a robbery. Do a murder. Do a robbery.
Let's do a murder.
Sorry. He eventually convinced David to do a robbery. So October 6th, 1965, we come to Edward Evans. He was the last victim of these two. He was 17 years old. He was one of 3 kids. He was a good kid, and he apparently was an apprentice engineer, so he was very smart. He was supposed to meet...
This is David?
No. This is Edward Evans.
Oh, Edward.
Their next victim. 17.
Next victim.
He's 17.
17. Oh.
He's the oldest one, though. So his friend actually ended up not show. So he was supposed to meet his friend for a Manchester United football game, soccer, as we like to call it, but it's football there. And
Football.
his friend didn't show up. Like I think he was at a bar or something like that, and he was like waiting around for his friend. His friend kind of stood him up. So then he was standing outside of a liquor store at one point. I'm not really sure if he walked to the liquor store or maybe it was beside the bar. I don't know. Ian spotted him, however the case. Ian asked him if he wanted to come back to his place and have some drinks. Edward was older. He was an older boy than the others, so he figured maybe it would be much easier to kind of get him back to his place. Edward said sure, because his night was pretty much ruined since his friend didn't show up. And so Ian said also that he tried to make moves on him and like flirt with him and see if he was like into that. Because as we said before, Ian is bi. I actually personally think Ian is just straight up. I think he's gay. He just didn't want to admit it back then, so he just kind of used bi as a way to say it. But whatever the case, he's a pedophile, and that's that.
Little boys.
That's for sure. He's definitely a pedophile. We saw that from last episode.
Yeah.
So, once in the car, Ian told Edward that Myra was his sister, because Myra was like in the back. Myra drops them off at her grandmother's, who is home, by the way. The grandmother's home at this time. And he told her to go to David's, but wait a little bit until she comes back, so that way, he can kind of loosen him up a bit. Edward, the boy. Ian and Edward have sex while they're waiting, and I'm assuming it's consensual. It doesn't say that it wasn't, but it doesn't say that it was, so I'm not really sure about that. While they were waiting on Myra, she walked to David in Maureen's house. That way she could say, when she got ready to leave, hey, the streetlights are out. David, can you walk me back? Because they were trying to get David back over there, and you'll understand why in a little bit. So David walks Myra back home, and once there, Ian leads them into the living room. Edward was sitting on the couch, and he walks up behind Edward with an axe and hits him over the head. He ends up hitting him 14 times with the axe on the head, neck, shoulders, all those areas. Myra's grandmother, I'm not laughing at that, I'm laughing at this part, or chuckling. Myra's grandmother asked what was going on because the dogs were like going crazy while he was axe murdering this poor child. But she just told her that nothing, she like, hollered back at her. She was like, nothing, everything's fine, Grandma, which kind of reminds me of the Jeffrey Dahmer, because we said he was actually at his grandmother's doing the same thing. Poor grandmas, man, they got it rough. I guess kids think they can get away with anything, so they go, kill some folks at grandma's house. Yes. I don't know. It's awful though, because that's not the first like murderer that we're gonna come across that actually did commit crimes in their grandparents' house. So after this, Ian gave David the axe, obviously, so that way his fingerprints would be on it, and so that way later he could frame David for this murder, because that's exactly what he does, and we'll get to that eventually. They wrap him up in a plastic sheet and then take him out. They take him out the next morning to dispose of him. So David is a wreck, and he's like trying not to lose his shit at this point because he is freaking out. He doesn't understand what's going on. He thinks, okay, if I say anything, they're gonna kill me. If I pretend like I'm scared, they're gonna kill me. They're not gonna let me leave. He didn't think they were gonna let him leave, but they do, because they're stupid. But I'm glad they did. At around 4 a.m., he said, hey, I'm going to go home and come help you guys out tomorrow with the body. Is that cool? Like, he was trying to be like, yeah, this is great. Like, murder, yay. I gotta go home and shower, and I'll be back. And he starts walking down the street, but once he gets out of their eyesight, like, he takes off running. He makes it to the house, and he tells Maureen everything, and they call the police. And Maureen said that when he got there, he was, like, out of breath and crying and, like, shaking and all that crap, which I would be, too. Yeah. I'm glad that he actually kept composure while he was in front of them, because if not, they probably would have killed him. If he would have freaked out and been like, you can't do this, blah, 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 they would have been like, okay, well, we're going to kill you. So October 7th, 1965, David told the cops every single thing he knew, and they arrested them at Myra's grandmother's house. They go to open one of the rooms to, like, a bedroom, and it was locked. And Myra told the police, well, I don't have the key. So Ian says, hey, just give them the key. He tells the police there was a really big fight and things got out of hand. You'll find out upstairs. So he was trying to say that once they found the body, like, it was because of a fight that he had with this kid, and that's why he had to kill him. Meaning, like, it was an accident. Why they wouldn't just call the police after an accident occurs, I don't know. So they found the body. They found Edward's body. And when they searched the rest of the home, of course, they found the notebooks with all the plans that they had written, talking about, last episode I told you guys that they were talking about writing all their plans down and all the different steps that they had to committing these murders. There was a note in the book with John Kilbride's name on it. So one of the missing children right there, the cops are like, what the crap? Like, this is basically saying, are these the murderers? They found books on sexual perversion. I didn't even know there was books on sexual perversion, but obviously. So the police obviously realized they may have the people that committed some of these murders in custody. Ian was charged. Hush. Sorry, it's our dog. If you heard her. So Ian was charged immediately with Edward's murder because he pretty much admitted it. But Myra was released, unfortunately, at the moment because they didn't have any evidence to pin her to Edward's murder. She was only out for 4 days though, because in those days, however, she destroyed a lot of evidence, which kind of sucks because it doesn't really matter because Spoiler alert, they're both dead now, and they both went to jail for life, but it just would have helped if they would have had more evidence. The police, however, did find the ticket to the suitcase they would put all the evidence into. So I don't know if y'all remember this, but last episode I told you that they had a suitcase and they would take all any belongings from the children that they couldn't bury or that they didn't want to bury, or if they had any like knives or anything like that, they would take those and they would put them in the suitcase and they'd put them in this locker at a train station. So they found the ticket. In the suitcase, they found pictures of Leslie Ann Downey and the tapes. On October 11th, Myra was charged with Edward's murder. I'm not really sure why she wasn't initially, but I guess since they found all the evidence in the locker, they probably assumed she was responsible for Edward's murder as well, but whatever. And she was brought back in. So October 16th, they went out to the moors because some of the pictures showed, them at the moors, and they were like, what the crap? They discovered Leslie's body that day. However, when and this is why I said that he was trying to frame David. When they asked Ian about the pictures, he said, "Oh yeah, I took those pictures, but I didn't kill her. She left with David and some other man after they left my house, and I don't know what happened to her." He said that he was just basically asked by David, "Could you take these explicit pictures of this child?" Because he was known as a photographer.
He's trying to pull a Schultz. I am Schultz. I know nothing.
Leslie. So yeah, he said, Leslie was alive when she left my house. They asked Myra then, and obviously she says, "I have nothing to say." Just like always, she just says, "I have nothing to say."
Nothing.
Which I'm really surprised that she didn't, because she's kind of dumb. So I'm really surprised she didn't go, "Oh yeah, we killed her." They at this point have to bring David in for questioning, and they show him the tapes and they show him the pictures, and he's like bawling, crying, freaking out, like he's upset. So right away they're like, okay, this obviously he did not do this. They're lying. So they charged them with Leslie's murder on October 21st, 1965. They also found John Kilbride's body at the moors. The detective showed Myra pictures of the corpse, and she would look away constantly. She claims all the pictures they took on the moors, she had no idea that there was bodies buried beneath them, which bullshit for sure. She screams at the cop and she's saying, "Take these pictures away. I don't want to see those pictures of these corpses." And the cop was pretty much pissed off, and he was like, "No, you're going to look at these pictures and you're going to see what you did." Ian, however, didn't deny it. He said that he did do all that. He's like, "Yeah, we did all that. We killed all those people." Like I said before, Ian, he doesn't care. He still, however, was trying to pin Leslie's murder on David, but obviously that didn't work. October 19th, 1966. Now trial begins. And during trial, they had to be protected by glass. They were like in a glass box because people were pretty upset, and there was a lot of people that wanted to kill him. Leslie's mother, Anne, she took the stand, and she got so upset. She was yelling at Myra, and she called her a tramp. And she said, "I don't understand how you can take a sweet little baby's life. My daughter was innocent." And she was saying all this. And the only thing that Myra had to say was she was holding Ian's hand and whispering in his ear. And she said, "I'm not a tramp." Like, that's all she cared about. She just cared about the fact that this mother who's crying because her baby's dead. And she was like, "I'm not a tramp." Fucking bitch. I can't stand her. Leslie's father and uncle attended the hearing, and they were gonna kill him. They had a plan. They attacked a police car outside of the courtroom because they thought that they were in it. However, they were using it as a diversion, because there was a lot of people that wanted to kill these two. So every day they had to kind of create a diversion to get them out of the courtroom and get them back to the jailhouse. During the whole trial, Myra was always worried about her appearance. She even got her lawyer to get someone to come do her roots because she just was upset because she looked so bad in the court. Like, she was like, I look bad. Like, my roots need to be done. Which I would have told that bitch that she could just, have some black ass roots. She did, however, ask a guard for makeup and lipstick because she wanted to look good for the court appearance, and he told her to fuck off. So David and Myra testified against, I keep saying Myra. David and Maureen, her own sister, testified against them. And they had separate trials for all the murders, which was good. Edward was first, and then there was John, and then Leslie. During these trials, they would pass notes and giggle with each other, which I don't see how in the hell that's even, okay, but whatever. And I didn't understand why they let them, be tried together, I guess, because they did the murders together, but I don't know, it just seemed a little weird, and they would let...
Well, there's England.
Yeah, I don't know anything.
Brits do weird things.
Yeah, I don't know about, their... What's the word I'm looking for?
Justice
system. Yeah. I don't know. So, May 6th, Ian was found guilty of all 3 murders, and Myra was found guilty of only Edward Evans' murder and Leslie Downey. Simply because they couldn't connect her to John Kilbride. They were sentenced to life in prison, and Ian did have to be sent to a mental institution, but that was where he eventually died.
It's good I'm not a judge, because I'd come up with all crazy shit. I'd have them hung by their genitals and...
For sure, yeah.
Just let them
they needed to have...
publicly displayed.
Whatever they did to those children, they needed to have them done to them. Like, the parents should have been able... I firmly believe in that. That's why I think in child murder cases, I think that whatever you do to a child, you need to have it done to you by the child's parent. Because I would be that parent. I'd be like, yeah, I'll do that. So yeah, they were found guilty and they served life in prison. Ian went on a hunger strike in prison. He would go on hunger strikes and not eat for weeks. And it eventually got so bad that that's why they had to put him in the mental institution, because they had to put him on a feeding tube and all this stuff because he was just being a
I'm not gonna eat.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to force feed me.
He just wanted to die. He didn't want to be in prison, but I'm just well, maybe, don't be a murderer and then you won't have to go to prison. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the gist of it. This part wasn't as long as the first one, but still pretty awful. But I'm just glad that they ended up in prison. And also, yeah, I wish there was... I can't even begin to believe why there's people that support Myra Hindley or did support her. And up until she died, I don't remember when she died. It wasn't too long ago. I think it was in the 2000s maybe. She still had supporters. There were still people that were like, she didn't do that. No. And she would say sometimes that, like I told you guys last time, her story changed constantly. So sometimes she would say that Ian would beat her if she didn't do what he told her and all this other stuff. But it still doesn't matter. All that's thrown out the window when you hear the tape, because the detective said no. In the tape of her and Ian, murdering Leslie, she's clearly enjoying herself thoroughly. So it's not like she wasn't around at all, like she claims. But yeah, that's it, you guys.
Ultimate moral of the story is, I'm not saying to what I'm about to say, I'm not saying be overprotective of your kids and keep them in a house locked away. Just teach your kids to stay away from strangers and make sure that they're going out with some friends. Make sure that it's a safe place. Do some research.
Yeah.
Or
especially nowadays.
If the other parent that says, hey, these kids are going to go to the movies, I'm going to, take them there. Make sure that they're not just dropping them off or whatever. Make sure they don't have to be in the same theater or in the same. Just make sure that they're monitored, especially if they're not old enough to fend for themselves. That 17-year-old dude, he should have got a little more brawn than brains, but not trying to say he was wrong, but still.
Well, it sounds like in that case, it sounds like he just thought Ian was attractive and wanted to go back, and then he axe murdered him over the head after turning his back. After he turned his back,
You really can't trust anybody you don't know. So
like one of the parents, and this is from last episode, so you didn't hear about this one, but she would always tell her son, like, you don't talk to any man that you don't know. And he wouldn't talk to any man that he didn't know. But Myra was the one that was luring these kids in for Ian. So that's how they kind of got a lot of these kids to go along with it, because she seemed so trusting and she was a woman. But I mean, still, even today, of course, today it's a lot different, and we teach our kids, do not talk to a stranger. Don't even, my kids aren't even ever anywhere by themselves. Even when they're in the front yard, I try to keep an eye on them, and I'm out there, or my oldest is out there with my little ones. So, but today is a lot crazier than it used to be, especially with human trafficking and all that. With that being said, if you guys, I don't know of any human trafficking donation websites, but if you do and you want to comment them down below, and we'll kind of, have those links for other people, or they can donate to any cause like that or anything for children, because it's really bad right now in our crazy world that we live in. But yeah, at least these two monsters kind of got what they deserved, and that's pretty much it. So if you guys want to follow us on social media, like I said at the beginning, you can do that. And we'll have a link. We'll have the links pretty much all over the place. But if you want to follow us on Spotify or anything like that, you can type in Lovely Freaks Podcast and it should pop up. Like I said, we're not... By the time this is up, we might be on iTunes. I'm waiting for them to verify us, and it's been almost about 24 hours, so shouldn't be much longer. We're also on Stitcher, Pocket Casts, which I didn't know about that until we started doing this, Google Podcast, and Amazon, Spotify, all that. All right, you guys. Well, next time we'll have, this will be an original cast. My sister will be here, hopefully. Not that you weren't bad, babe. You were great. All right. Well, we'll see you guys later.
I'm Ron Burgundy. Stay classy, San Diego.
Bye. That better not get me into trouble.